read a few interviews with you, and you talked about how personal this film was for you.
Right.
So talk about your connection to it, and then why you decided to make this as a return to film, Danish filmmaking, and as a
Right. I mean, I got sent the novel before it was published by the publisher, and fell in love with the novel almost immediately. I mean, I love the characters, I love the themes, and one of the reasons I did was because I could recognize. I wouldn't say I saw myself in the main character, but I could recognize certain things that were about like devoting your life to your ambition, like to your art and your craft. And I had certainly devoted a lot of years of my life to making films. That was all I was thinking about since I was 12 years old, was just making films. And then having children at a fairly late point in life. I had my first child. My son was born 3.5 years ago. And I read the novel at the same time, and I immediately understood what the theme of the story was, which is there's a choice in life whether you only are about ambition and drive and reaching certain goals, whether it be in your art or what it is, or whether you're actually able to stop and say, wait a minute, what's really important? It's the cliche, if everybody talks about on your deathbed, what are you really thinking about? Are you thinking about your accomplishments? Or are you thinking about, I'm going to miss my kids and the loves that I have in my life? And that really felt, for the first time in my life, having had kids, I felt that as a true thing. It wasn't just a cliche, it was a real thing. So I could see myself making a movie that was true and that felt true and didn't feel like, oh, I was just going through the motions of saying, yeah, stop and smell the roses. It was actually a true feeling for me. So that was the reason why it felt personal. And then also I just loved the story. I love the storytelling, it's such an epic. I love these epic stories, and I fell in love with that.
So to get back to what you were talking about and describing the emotional impact, obviously Mads Mikkelsen is an actor who can convey both of those things you're talking about, like this incredible determination. I mean, you really believe he can devote his life to turning this land around, but also the vulnerability and, the way he opens himself up to, being a surrogate father here.
Right.
But so it's hard to imagine this film without him. So
I couldn't have done it without him. I honestly couldn't have done it without him. And I think that was actually a choice. It was a risk I was willing to take. I asked Mads, even before I wrote the script, I asked him, would you want to do this part? And he said, I will do it if I like the script. And I knew that if he said no, I probably wouldn't do the film, because I thought it would never be the same without him. And so I was really fortunate that he did like the script.
And then what was it like getting the production done? I was surprised to see how low the budget was, because I'm used to enormous budgets for American films.
Sure.
And this, it looks like everything is on the screen here. It's such an incredible production.
Yeah, I think that's one of the pluses about working sort of in your home country. You have your friends around you. My whole crew is people that I know very well, actors like Mads, already a friend, somebody I worked with before. Everything is going quite smoothly in a sense, and you're not spending a single cent on anything that's not going on the screen. So I think that we were very well prepared. I think that was how we sort of got it all on the screen. We were extremely prepared, so that every day we knew exactly what we were doing. We had all the shots sort of storyboarded. We were very meticulous, because we knew that there was no way we could do this kind of epic, movie for, what was it, like $8 million. We couldn't do it if we didn't plan for it really well.
What did you need to do to adapt the source material, to adapt the novel for screen and make it feel relevant and keep it very tight? I mean, I feel like there's not a wasted moment in the film.
Right.
So what did you need to do?
I have some experience in adapting novels already, so I think I've gotten better at that as the years have gone by. I think, one of the first things I do is always I tend to sort of like really zero in on what is the main story, and then I kind of very sort of brutally excise everything else. Because otherwise, if you try to adapt the whole thing, it'll be a 4 or 5 hour kind of incoherent, like it should be a TV show rather. So if you want to do a film, you have to go like, okay, this is Ludwig's story, and Barbara and Mahmoud's and these important people. And then what we also did was there was a lot of stuff in the book about the nature, which I loved reading, but you can't have 20 minutes of just like seeing the heather grow, right? So we had to excise some of those. It was almost Tolkien-esque in its like nature descriptions. And I love that. And I also love that in Tolkien. But there's a reason why Peter Jackson didn't have like 25 minutes of like just nature in the Lord of the Rings films. And I think we did similar stuff. Then we condensed some of the plot and the timelines, and we took out some of the characters that were there were more characters than the novel, and you do stuff like that. And in the end, hopefully you end up with something that retains the sort of like the soul and spirit of the novel and the main story of the novel without sort of like sacrificing the big ideas.
So I'm sure that's something people are going to want to know who've just seen the film, is how much of this is based on actual history, and how much liberty
More
the
than you
novel
would think.
took and you took.
Yeah, more than you would think. I mean, Ludwig is a real character. He was the first person to actually manage to grow something on the heath back then in 1750s. So that's a true story. And the main antagonist, the Schinkel, the brutal, horrible Baron, he was real, and he was notorious. He's a notorious he was notorious for the way he treated his subjects, for the horrible, like his methods, the torture was real. So, I mean, a lot of that was real. There's certain things that have been fictionalized by the novelist that we also adapted into the film, but a lot of it is real.
Great. And the ending, the escape at the end that we is that how the novel ends, and is that?
That's how the novel ends. I don't know that that's how it happened in real life, but we do know that in real life there's similar. Of course, we can't spoil too much, but there's a similar trajectory to what happens to him in real life, and what happens in the film. It's not dissimilar. But we also have to remember that this being the 1750s and Ludwig not being a famous person at the time, so there was not a lot of record. There was not a lot of there weren't any books written about him, or he's not a very, until the film came out in Denmark, he was not a known person in Denmark.
Can you tell us about the physical production? I mean, it looks like it would be a brutal film to make. I'm sure it wasn't as hard, as rough conditions as it appears. But what was it like, and then where did you find the locations?
We actually were extremely fortunate that we were able to film the heath sequences on the exact spot where the real Ludwig 𝙀𝙀𝙀𝙀 built his house. So that's a rarity, and so we managed to shoot it at the real location where he was, back then, and that the conditions were harsh, but I would say, compared to what they must have gone through, in the 1750s, where there was no mercy. If there was wind, you were just like whipped by the wind all day long. If there was sun, you were baking. It's almost like the American pioneers, right? It was merciless. But we had the luxury of, like, if we were a little cold, we could go into our trailer and have a cappuccino, so it wasn't that tough for us. I wasn't like and it was only, we had 3 weeks of outdoor shooting. I think we were okay, it was okay.
And what can you tell us about what Mads Mikkelsen is like, in terms of his working method? I am guessing like he's more fun than he appears on screen. He's so good at seeming taciturn. Yeah.
He certainly is. In fact, he's one of the funniest guys to be with, and the reason why it was such a pleasure to work with him again. Last time around on Royal Affair 10, 11 years ago, we kind of got to know each other and we had a lot of fun. This time it was even more fun because we were already friends. And so, as tough as that film is, and as tough the themes are, every time we yelled cut or every time the day was over, we would all go out and have a tremendous amount of fun together. You know, and we would have these wonderful dinners where we just discuss the next day's work, and it was just a pleasure. It was almost like a summer camp. And Mads is as a very humorous person. He loves, you know, working, he loves life, but then when he's on set, he's extremely focused and intense and precise. And he's the kind of actor that you don't really need to do a lot of takes. He is so in control of not just his character, but he knows the story so well. He always knows where he came from, where he's going. He's a real partner, like he's your storytelling partner, which is great.
And the last thing I want to ask you about is just the type of filmmaking this is. A number of the critics who wrote about it said type of movie we don't see much of anymore, you know,
Right.
So that sort of old-fashioned adventure movie.
Yeah, in a way.
Are there movies that you love that you had in mind, or was there something you were
I did. I mean, I'm an unabashed fan of the old epics. I mean, I have to say, I'm a huge David Lean fan. I love, you know, John Ford. I have this thing. I love movies from every time period, but there's a certain kind of movie that I always go back to and watch again and again and again, and that will always be films like Lawrence of Arabia. You know, like these long, like epic, sweeping films about interesting three-dimensional characters, but with big, you know, scope. And I just love those films. I don't know what that is or why that is. You know, I was also a big Spielberg fan, and he's done a lot of those as well. And there's something to that that just draws me in. It's like reading a novel, you know, watching a film that makes you a little bit feel like reading a novel is a very tough kind of film to do. But when it succeeds, it really is a pleasure to watch.
Absolutely. Well, it's so satisfying to watch it. So thank you so much for taking the time, and congratulations again, and good luck with the release
Thank you
of
so
the
much.
film. Okay. Thanks a lot.